Your pot has been bisque fired, so your glaze should appear white instead of the gray it was before. If you had color slip, that will also appear as well. For this example, I'm adding clear glaze all over my entire pot except the bottom. I will also be adding glaze to the inside of the vessel. Next, you're going to pick out your glaze. I have some test tiles in this box that will show you what the glaze will look like when it's fired. On one side it has the word, the name and the number, and the other side it has what the glaze will look like after it's fired. Glaze does not appear the same whenever it's in a bottle compared to what it does when it's fired. The glaze in this cabinet are organized numerically and by the type of glaze they are. You need to make sure you're reading the labels and that you're looking in the correct spot for the actual glaze. You're going to shake up your glaze or stir it before you use it. Glaze likes to settle towards the bottom and separate once it's sitting for a while, so you need to make sure you shake it and stir it really well. I already did this before I made the video. Then if you have an inside of a pot, you can pour it on the inside and then pour it back out. When you do this, you actually only need to do one coat because that pouring method is thick enough. If you use a brush, you have to do 3 coats. You need to make sure that you pour the excess back into the container and not down the drain. This glaze is still good to use, and you can use it on your extra areas on yours, or someone else can use it. If there are any areas that you missed when you did the pouring, you can now add your brush strokes to the glaze that was already in there and try to smudge it around a little bit. Whenever you brush, you do have to do 3 coats. You'll notice that it's already thinner than the coat that I did with the pouring. So make sure you add your brush strokes and you do 3 coats. Now I'm going to take my pot and flip it upside down to get all the extra glaze out from the bottom. I don't want to have any extra glaze at the bottom because there is such thing as having too much glaze. It can crack and bubble and make pinholes, and we don't want that. Now that the inside is done, I can take the brush and do the rest of it. I'm going to brush over every single side of it except the bottom. So I'm going to do 3 coats. I'm going to do 1 coat, let it dry, and then go back and do another coat, and I'm actually going to do the second coat in an opposite direction, and then I'll do a 3rd coat in an opposite direction from that whenever that one dries. You'll notice that the 3rd coat is done and you cannot see any more color. That means that it's all covered and consistent all the way throughout. You'll also notice that it's pink. Whenever it is fired, it will melt down and turn clear. Always remember that glaze does not appear the same way as it will after it's fired. Lastly, I'm going to wipe down the bottom with a wet sponge. You always want to make sure you do this, because if you don't, your glaze is going to melt down and your pot will be stuck to the shelf and it'll have to be broken off. Here are some helpful glazing tips that you need to keep in mind. When you are glazing, you need to remember that the bottle and whatever's inside the bottle will not appear the same after it's fired. So it's important that you look at your test tiles to make sure that it will look like what you want it to. You can see exactly what it looks like on those test tiles. Next, you also are never going to glaze the bottom. I've talked about it before in this video that if you glaze the bottom, it will get stuck to the shelf and it will have to be broken off and probably shattered in a bunch of different pieces. If there is a lid or a rim that the lid goes on, whatever, you're not going to glaze either side because otherwise it will get stuck together, so you want to keep those bisque as well. You're going to do 3 coats every single time with your brush. You're going to do each coat in a different direction, and then you're also going to let those dry in between. Lastly, you can pour your glaze into the inside if you'd like, if you have room, and there's no holes or anything like that, and then you're going to wipe the bottom when you're done.